Uh,
Okay. Hi, everybody. Happy Tuesday night. It is Tuesday. What is today? August something? August 11th, maybe? I don't know. 12th? Uh, I am Mrs. Dave the lawyer. Real name Jacqueline Leah. We are streaming a hearing from Congress from a few weeks ago. The original date was July 20th. And I actually did not see this hearing yet, and I really haven't heard a lot about it. It's about insider trading and whether or not Congress should pass a bill to stop insider trading. So this should be really interesting. It's a very long hearing. They address some other issues too. If we do not like it, if it seems boring, I have a couple other, well, I have like a dozen other hearings queued up that we can put on instead, but let's see how it goes. Not my favorite Congress people in this hearing, but maybe some of them will surprise us. I know Mr. Dave had some specific congressmen and senators that he liked to stream over and over, but I like a little bit of diversity. I want to see how all the congressmen speak and all of their views. You know, knowledge is power, so even if they're not superstars like Josh Hawley or Jim Jordan or Ron Johnson or Brandon Gill, he's a rising star. Let's see these guys in action.
Now we turn to the business before us. Today, the Rules Committee is convening to consider 4 measures: H.R. 6955, H.R. 7008, H-Con-Res 113, and H.R. 9770. H.R. 6955, the Main Street Capital Access Act, would tailor bank regulations based on the size of the financial institution to spur local bank formation and to empower community lenders. When the Dodd-Frank Act was signed into law, community and mid-sized banks were unnecessarily subjected to a regulatory structure designed for large, complex financial institutions. This caused a ripple effect throughout communities across the nation. Local lending was suffocated, and the American people were the ones most affected. H.R. 6955 ensures community lenders can focus on serving families, small businesses, and local economies, making life more affordable for Americans and empowering Main Street. H.R. 7008, the Stop Insider Trading Act, would prohibit members of Congress, their spouses, or dependent children from purchasing stocks that are publicly traded. Additionally, this legislation would require members of Congress to disclose publicly each intended sale of stocks with the clerk of the House prior to its sale. Further, should any infractions occur, the House Ethics Committee would issue a fine to the offending member equal to $2,000 or 10% of the value of the covered investment, whichever is greater, plus the net gain realized from the sale. In addition, this legislation aims to restore trust in our election systems by implementing a common sense requirement of showing a valid photo ID to vote in federal elections. 24 states already require photo ID to be presented prior to voting. Heck, you even need to present a photo ID to utilize the Olive Garden's never-ending pasta pass. 80% of the American people believe showing photo ID at the polls makes sense. It's beyond time to make this simple first step to securing our election system. H-Con Res 113, the concurrent resolution on the budget for fiscal year 2027, unlocks the very first step in advancing our third reconciliation package under the House Republican majority. This concurrent resolution covers 3 issues of paramount importance: providing additional resources for baseline readiness so that the men and women of the armed forces are given the tools they need to carry out their missions successfully. Securing American elections, an issue that the American people remain very attuned to and support through and through. And supporting our nation's farmers and ensuring that our nation's food supply and food security remain as strong as they can possibly be. I look forward to the forthcoming testimony of our colleagues on why advancing this first step of our third reconciliation measure is so important. Finally, we turn to H.R. 9770, the continuing resolution that would fully fund the federal government through December 4th of this year. The House has been working diligently to pass standalone appropriations bills consistent with regular order. While we remain optimistic about the work of Chairman Cole and our colleagues in this process, that does not mean we should blind ourselves to the reality of the timeline ahead of us.
Hello, chat. Hello, Atticus. I want to read your comment because I agree. Why do people vote for these old-ass boomers? I think a lot of people are wondering the same question. I personally think it's through a combination of things. First of all, I think during like boring midterm elections, I know, voter turnout is low. So unless it's like a presidential election, not a lot of people show up to vote. The other thing is people don't really pay attention to their local elections. That's another thing. They don't pay attention to their local elections, and these people have to start from somewhere. They start locally because people don't pay attention, and then, 60, 70 years down the line, here they are, still in Congress. I think also we have some issues with our voting, and maybe people aren't really voting for them, but because we don't have safe and secure elections, these are the people that stay in power. Those are just some theories, but I agree. Maybe we do need some age limits on how old somebody can be when they're in office. I am talking, I'm not trying to, I am on a treadmill, but let's continue with this old lady.
We will likely need some kind of short-term extension to keep some, if not.
Oh, the other thing I wanted to say also is I do not understand why they have to meet in the middle of the year or in the fall to discuss the budget till the end of the year. Why can't they just make a budget at the beginning of the year and that's your budget for the whole year? That's what most people have to do. I don't understand why our government is so bad at following a budget. So bad.
Not all of our government open past the end of the fiscal year. Providing a buffer to continue our Article 1 duties of funding the government is prudent, responsible, and necessary. I note that Democrats supported virtually all of the current funding levels for agencies. They should do so again to responsibly ensure that an unnecessary collapse in government functions will not occur this fall. Unfortunately, if passed as prologue, our Democrat colleagues may very well once again prove themselves incapable of supporting the continuity of government given their previous shutdown antics. I hope that is not the case today. We have the obligation to advance funding immediately so that the government does not bear the brunt once more of political gamesmanship and obstruction spurred by our colleagues across the aisle. With that, I now yield to the ranking member for any comments he wishes to make.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. And let me begin by saying that I want to associate myself with your kind words about Ashley's service to this committee. And we wish her nothing but the best in her next chapter. You know, the people who serve on the staffing of the Rules Committee work awfully long hours, probably more than any other committee. And we don't thank them enough, but I wish you all the best, Ashley. And now, Madam Chair, there's a lot before us today, including two bills that we already considered 3 weeks ago. They are back on the agenda because Republican leaders sent everyone home before bringing these bills to the floor since they didn't have the votes to pass their own rule. So now we're doing it all over again. And then there are a few new things before us today. First, a budget proposal that includes $73 billion for Donald Trump's new never-ending war in Iran that Congress already voted to end, a $12 billion Band-Aid for farmers who are hurting, which I would say is a pretty big admission that Trump's tariff policies have devastated American farmers, and of course, $10 billion to indulge the president's insane election conspiracy theories. I don't know how many of you watched his speech last Thursday, but it was both wacky and scary. Wacky because it was one conspiracy theory after another, scary because this guy's actually sitting in the Oval Office. Together, this budget framework outlines nearly $100 billion, that's billion with a B, in funding with zero pay-fors. Even Republicans know this thing is a dud. One Republican said, and I quote, $95 billion in new deficit spending, no offsets, and not one provision to lower the cost of living, end quote. Other Republican members have called it, quote, dead on arrival. There's also a continuing resolution to keep the government open. The funding deadline is months away, and Republicans are already admitting they cannot finish their work. Instead, they're trying to punt our work until December 4th. We also have before us the Stop Insider Trading Act. I absolutely support a ban on congressional stock trading. You shouldn't be able to use public power for private profit. I agree with that 100%. But the idea that this Republican Congress has suddenly seen the light is a joke.
Is it just the Republicans that are insider trading? Because I feel like our former Speaker of the House, who's definitely a Democrat, Miss Pelosi, feel like she is like the queen of trades. Like her trades and her trading history like outperform the best hedge funds. Like if there's anybody that you want to copy their trading, Nancy Pelosi, her trades, ooh, she's good. She's very, very good.
The net worth of Donald Trump and his family have grown on a scale without precedent. We just found out his own teleprompter operator has been illegally cashing in on Kalshi bets. I mean, the corruption is staggering. And now the president wants to sell early access to his market-moving social media posts to those who can afford it. This president and this Republican Party are rotten to the core and corrupt through and through. This is a nice little game they're playing, bringing the stock trading ban to the floor and attaching it, to get this, an unrelated partisan bill to make it harder for American citizens to vote in elections. But that's what they're doing, and it's a game to them. It's all a game. If they cared about corruption, they could have banned stock trading 18 months ago. And they could have brought a bill to the floor to address the blatant, brazen, shocking corruption at the White House. Instead, we get this totally inadequate and insufficient bill, which they know is dead on arrival in the Senate. And finally, there's Republicans' so-called Main Street Capital Access Act. Lovely name. Wall Street must have focus grouped it. This bill makes bank mergers easier, regulators weaker, and oversight looser. What could possibly go wrong? Republicans run the House, they run the Senate, and the White House. What they lack is any idea on how to use it to make people's lives better. Power is supposed to be about helping people, and instead this majority uses it to protect the president, to pay off the powerful, and to funnel more money into yet another endless war. The American people deserve a hell of a lot better, and I yield back my time.
I have to say, like, I don't agree with most of what he said, but a compelling speaker, not in like a Brandon Gill type of way, but this guy is kind of funny. Like, I feel like maybe he wanted to be like an actor. Like, I could see him on like a Seinfeld-like show, but he just wasn't like good looking enough to be on TV, so he became a congressman. Anyways, let's continue. This actually is going to be a more interesting hearing than I thought it would be.
Thank you very much, Mr. McGovern. Without objection, any prepared statements that our witnesses may have will be included in the record. I now welcome our panel, Chairman Arrington and Representative McGarvey from the House Budget Committee. Your full statements will be submitted for the record, and we ask that you summarize your statement in 5 minutes. Chairman Arrington, I welcome your testimony.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Ranking Member. I agree with Mr. McGovern. The American people deserve better than what they've gotten for the last year and a half. But what they've gotten is a Democrat Party that I don't recognize in my 10 years of service. Persistent, habitual, never-ending obstruction to stop the president from succeeding in advancing the policies and the agenda the American people overwhelmingly supported and voted for unilateral Republican leadership in Congress alongside of this president. That has made it difficult to govern. What was unprecedented from my Democrat colleagues is now par for the course. Exhibit A, the first shutdown of the entire federal government over a clean CR. It's the first time it's ever happened from my Democrat colleagues. Both parties have participated in these shutdowns. I will readily concede that. But the first time a clean CR was rejected just to keep the government funding at the last year's funding levels until we could mete out a compromise solution. What was their reasoning? What was their counteroffer? To repeal the program integrity measures that we put in place in the big, beautiful bill to stop waste, fraud, and abuse, to prevent people not eligible, illegal, or people who are able to work and not working, siphoning money off of the safety net programs that are there for our most vulnerable Americans. It was the longest shutdown in history before the next Democrat shutdown. This time it was shutting down the Department of Homeland Security after we had agreed, four corners, on funding the government. They shut down Homeland. They handcuffed our Border Patrol agents from protecting our borders. They basically shut down our Coast Guardsmen from defending our ports, CISA agents from defending our critical infrastructure against being hacked. For over 70 days, they held the American people's security hostage until we used a reconciliation bill to break the obstruction and fund ICE and CBP because they defunded it. To be clear, they shut Homeland Security down and then they defunded ICE and CBP. We had to turn it on unilaterally through reconciliation. We didn't get a single vote from Democrats on that. Now here we are in the long train of obstruction abuses to do something before November as the window closes that is not just meaningful, it is important, it is critical, it is urgent. Support our troops, strengthen our food supply, and safeguard the integrity of our elections. Madam Chair, the obstruction and resistance at all cost and on all fronts goes beyond shutdowns. for the first time in 65 years, or what is at least 65 years of a tradition of bipartisan support for the NDAA, National Defense Authorization Act, that are the policies that undergird our entire United States national defense, have been held up in the Senate by the Democrats. Prior to that, based on a temporary personnel decision of the president, they held up FISA 702, a critical security tool for our intelligence community to stop Chinese espionage, to stop terrorism, to stop drug trafficking. This is this new shameful era of obstruction, and I presume that the motivation is to placate the left-wing Mandami socialist base of the party. I have no other answers. So, Madam Chair and members of the distinguished Rules Committee, I present to you a reconciliation bill that will provide emergency funding for our sons and daughters so they have baseline battlefield readiness, emergency funding to provide resilience and strength to our food supply that we all benefit from, and lastly, the consent of the governed. And a functioning democracy requires integrity and confidence in elections. And I will quote former Speaker Nancy Pelosi in 2017 after the 2016 election, based on the phony Russia collusion that was debunked later by an independent counsel. And I quote, "Our election was hijacked. There is no question. Congress has a duty to protect our democracy." Well, here's where I agree with her. We have a duty to protect our democracy. And when half the country has little to no confidence in the outcome of our elections because we don't have basic safeguards like a photo ID, I think it is incumbent upon us to act and act with purpose and with urgency. And with that, I yield.
Wow, that guy had a lot of great things to say, and I want to comment on a few things. So, first of all, he said at the beginning of his speech, the Democratic Party has become unrecognizable. And I have to agree, like, the Democratic Party is so different today than it was like I think back like 15 years ago, like when Obama was the president. The Democratic Party is so different now than it was back then. And honestly, I never thought I would say this, but I kind of miss Obama. I do. Definitely was not my favorite president in history, but I kind of miss him, and I miss how our country and how the Democratic Party used to be under Obama, because you could have like a rational conversation with somebody on the left. Now, it's all TDS. You know, you say one word that triggers them and they go nuts. And I was talking to my friend earlier today. She may still be in this chat, but she was telling me the story that she was visiting her family, and her family member had an aide, and her family member said in front of the aide, you know, just asking her a question about, you know, what she thought about ICE and deporting illegals. And she made the statement that, you know, she's really happy that the president is taking the initiative to deport illegal immigrants. Well, because she said that, just stating her view, her mother-in-law's aide like went crazy on her and started yelling at her, okay? And this is somebody she had like a very good relationship with for years, but because she said something positive about Trump, she went nuts on her. Well, anyways, I told her, actually, that's one of the things that I think Trump is doing a terrible job at. I don't think that he's deporting enough illegals. I thought he was gonna come in and really take the initiative to get rid of the 10 million plus illegals that the Biden regime let in. So I thought we would see, you know, a lot more illegals leave this country at a quicker rate. And I reminded her too, because a lot of you guys forget this. When Obama was president, he deported a record number of illegals. Obama deported so many illegals when he was president that his nickname was literally Deporter in Chief, okay? So I feel like Donald Trump should go have a chat with Obama and learn from him, like, what he needs to do to deport more people, because we have too many illegals in this country from the last 4 years. Anyways, let's, the other thing I want to say is I think it is terrible and disgusting that when we have government shutdowns, we don't pay our troops. That should be first and foremost, and it blows my mind that our senators and our congressmen still get paid during these shutdowns, and they don't pay our troops. Our troops need to be paid. They need to do everything possible so we don't run out of money at the end of the year. And we know for a fact, because there's literal hearings on this every month, that our taxpayer money gets wasted. Wasted, blatant fraud, and just careless waste. They need to learn how to stick with a budget. They need to stick to the budget that they create. And there should be no reason whatsoever that anybody that works for the government should not be paid, but especially our troops, especially the troops that are overseas fighting for us. I can't even believe that we allow that to happen.
Thank you very much, Mr. Arrington. Mr. McGarvey, you're recognized. Thank you. Welcome to the Rules Committee.
Thank you, Chairwoman Fox. Thank you, Ranking Member McGovern. Ashley, thank you for your service. Best of luck in your next chapter. I'm here on behalf of Ranking Member Boyle and House Budget Committee Democrats to talk about what is actually in this bill, and I think importantly what is not. But first I want to start off with something that my colleague Chairman Arrington addressed. And he addressed the need for people to work together. Let me talk about that for just a second. You know, as a candidate, Donald Trump promised the American people two things I actually agreed with. He said no more foreign wars, and that he would lower costs on day one. Here's the thing. Those weren't just empty, worthless campaign promises. They've become actual and dangerous lies. More than 18 months since he took office, we are fighting a foreign war in Iran. 17 American service members are dead. 3 were killed just this past weekend. 1 was 19 years old. 3 more Americans dead after Donald Trump declared a total and complete victory in the war that he started. This war has cost us American lives. This war has cost us tens upon tens of billions of dollars, and we are getting nothing in return. It is the president's incompetence that has made our world less safe and stable than the day that he started this war. And because of Trump's war, because of Trump's tariffs, and because of this lapdog Republican Congress, families in Louisville, Kentucky, and across this country are paying more than ever for groceries, for rent, utilities, for healthcare, and just about everything else. But here's the thing, it's not happening by accident. These aren't just broken promises. These are deliberate policy choices by the House Republicans. Let's look at the first Republican reconciliation bill. We're on the third one right now, the first Republican reconciliation bill, the one big beautiful bill, as everyone called it. It gave massive tax cuts to billionaires and the wealthiest corporations while taking trillions of dollars away from American families' health insurance. It took money away from kids and seniors, moms who were just trying to put food on the table. So they did a second reconciliation bill. And the second reconciliation bill, what did it do? It gifted ICE $70 billion. That was on top of the already $140 billion that they gave them the year before. And what is this money going toward? 55 deaths in ICE custody since Donald Trump took office. Kids used as bait, families ripped apart, people killed on American streets. Just this past week, we saw 2 Americans killed by unfit and untrained ICE agents. So you think that the third reconciliation bill, this would be the one where they finally do something about a
So I have a dumb question for everybody, and I really don't know the answer 100%, so I want to hear everybody's opinion. Why do you think that our president, any president for that matter, has the authority to lower prices? Because we live in America, we live in a capitalist country. Like, I don't think once a company raises their prices, unless they're maybe like gas, they're not lowering their prices. Can you guys give me an example? I mean, eggs. Egg prices, I guess, were way up and then went down, but like, like snack foods and stuff like that. Like, I just don't see it. Like, once they raise the price, I don't ever see them lowering the price. I don't think that Trump has the authority to force private companies to lower their prices, right? I mean, we could demand that companies lower their prices and, boycott them. But I don't understand how he has the authority to make companies lower the price. And like I said, I may be stupid, I may be dumb, and I don't know, but please tell me. I'm a female, okay? You're in the wrong group, Mikey, if you want to see a man on a treadmill. But anyways, please tell me in the conversation, not like some TDS BS, but really tell me why you think that any president has the authority to make private companies lower their pricing. And I say that because if we want prices to drop, we can't just argue back and forth about right versus left and blame somebody that has no control over it. Like, we really need to get to the root of the problem if we want anything to change.
Affordability for American families. Spoiler alert, it's not. The bill's 47 pages long. It doesn't include one single word about lowering costs for the American people. There is not one word in here about affordability. Instead, Republicans use this to add nearly $100 billion to the debt and deficit of this country to fund the most unpopular war in American history. But back to the original comments by the chairman about working together, we do want to work on things that I think are broadly popular. During the Budget Committee markup, Democrats offered 14 common sense amendments to try to make this into a bill that does anything to help families. We tried to reverse cuts to Medicaid and SNAP. We tried to lower health insurance premiums, repeal Trump's tariff taxes, stop taxpayer dollars from funding an unauthorized war on more ICE brutality. I offered an amendment to make sure that the taxpayers would not be forced to pay for Donald Trump's ballroom. What happened? Republicans rejected every single amendment. They said no to health care. They said no to food assistance. They said no to lower gas prices. They said no to ending the president's corruption. But for Donald Trump's foreign war, here we are. And House Republicans are happy to open the checkbook. This is a budget of broken promises. It puts American people last. As we sit here, we sit in this fancy room, and we're talking about rules and process and budgets and reconciliation. We may think that the American people are sitting here watching. They're not. They're not talking about reconciliation. They are at home right now talking about their bills. They're talking about rent. They're talking about health care. They're talking about groceries. They're talking about gas prices. They are sitting here wondering what they're going to do about utilities and prescription drugs and why their paychecks don't go as far as they used to. And they're asking a fair question. This is a question we should ask ourselves. The American people are asking this question. Why can Republicans always find money for billionaires and wars, but never for the rest of us? Because that's who they serve. The Budget Committee Democrats are ready to work with anyone who is serious about lowering costs and making life easier for the American people. This bill.
But what he's saying is completely untrue. And what has happened historically in the past is they pretend like they're doing stuff for the American people, but it's just using our tax money for other things, and they misappropriate it, and I'm sure, they're laundering it and getting kickbacks and whatnot, and the end result is they actually put billions, if not trillions of dollars in big billion-dollar, trillion-dollar corporations' pockets, and I'll give you a perfect example, the Affordable Care Act. When they talk about, the Republicans taking away health care, no, they didn't take away health care. They ended a temporary act, the American Rescue Act, that was enacted during COVID to help people get bigger subsidies because they couldn't work. But here's what happened. Because these big insurance companies knew that the federal government and the state governments were subsidizing insurance, the premiums, the deductibles, the max out-of-pocket, the co-pays have grown to astronomical levels that nobody can afford. But they keep getting approved in states, and they keep getting paid. Most people cannot afford $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $6,000. I've seen $9,000 a month in premiums for families on the Affordable Care Act marketplace. People can't afford that, and it's a waste of money. Why would you even want to afford that? That's a crazy amount of money for an insurance premium. But these carriers offer these plans because our federal government and our state government was subsidizing $2,000 plus premiums a month. And who does that hurt? It hurts us. It hurts the American taxpayer. It hurts the people paying the taxes. And ultimately, when you don't qualify for these subsidies anymore, now you're out of luck because you can't afford these huge premiums. Or even if you get a zero premium plan, you don't have an extra $10,600 to cover your deductible if something goes wrong, okay? But you know who profits from this? Two people. One, major insurance companies. They profit for it because they're getting their monthly subsidized premium from our government, which is us, our tax money. They're already billion and trillion dollar companies. And two, our politicians, our lovely politicians on both sides of the aisle, because all of them get heftily supported by the insurance lobby. Both sides get paid lots of money from insurance company PACs and lobbyists and whatnot, okay? So when they say that Republicans are, putting money or giving money back to billionaires, they're doing the same thing. They're doing the exact same thing. They're just doing it in a more covert way, but they're still doing it. And that is the problem. The root of the problem is that we have allowed the pricing to get out of hand. And so we're just over here arguing with each other, blaming this person or that person. And they're not going to tell you the root of the problem because that gives away the game. Then they don't get their money and their perks, okay? But let's be honest with ourselves, because we, the people, we have the power to do something. We have the power to not participate in these systems anymore. We have all the power, but we give it away, and we certainly give it away when we argue with each other and just parrot back propaganda, okay? We're all on the same side. We really are. We're all on the same side. We're human beings. We want to be treated properly. We want to be treated civilly. We want to be respected. We want to live with dignity. We want to live with respect, okay? Let's treat each other, especially right now in this stream, let's treat each other with respect and dignity and work together. Because these guys aren't going to work together. Because political theater and chaos, it sells, okay? But we're not going to be hypnotized by this anymore. We're going to have productive conversations, and we're going to do what we need to do as individuals to solve these problems. Because we can't depend on our governments. They have failed us time and time again.
Does neither. I urge my colleagues to reject this bill, and thank you, and I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. McGarvey. Ms. Fishbach, do you have any questions? Mr. McGovern.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, let me just say, I love you Republicans. You don't take responsibility for anything. I mean, you control the House, you control the Senate, you control the White House, I think you control the Supreme Court, and nothing is your responsibility. Boy, it must be nice to live that way. And I'll just say one thing. When you guys want to get things done, I mean, you do. When you wanted tax cuts for millionaires and billionaires, I mean, you shoved that through, added $4.7 trillion to the debt. You got that through. I wish we could have stopped it, but you got it through. When you wanted to cut Medicaid by $1 trillion, you did it in a nanosecond. SNAP by $200 billion, you're going to increase hunger in this country. I mean, so the idea that, this idea that somehow you can't get anything done, yeah, you do. The stuff you get done, unfortunately, is bad for the American people. But everything is somebody else's fault. It's never your fault. And don't even get me going on corruption or on fraud or waste or abuse. I'm looking at what's happening in the White House right now and the silence of the entire Republican conference. I mean, that is complicity. That is complicity. And history will record that you were silent as this president ripped off the American people. I've never seen anything like it. It makes Richard Nixon look like a Boy Scout. But Chairman Arrington, in 2024, you came before this committee and you said, quote, "At a time when our national debt is approaching $35 trillion, we are adding almost $8 billion to the debt every day, and we pay 62 cents on every dollar just to service the debt. We must lead Congress toward a path of fiscal responsibility. The trajectory is unsustainable and is arguably the biggest threat facing our nation," end quote. You ended your remarks by saying, and I quote, "Not paying for our spending is not only irresponsible, it is irrational. We cannot continue to thrust the costs of things we think are important onto the backs of our kids and grandkids," end quote. Chairman Arrington, do you still believe that our debt is one of the biggest threats facing our nation?
I do.
So, Chairman Arrington, can you affirm the basic fact that since January 20th, 2025, since President Trump and the Republicans assumed full control of government, the national debt has increased by $3.3 trillion from $36.2 trillion to $39.5 trillion?
It's a misleading stat because the economy has grown with the cuts that we made on waste, fraud, and abuse. In total, for the first time in a decade, the deficit to GDP has gone down under Republican leadership and this president's watch.
You disagree with the figure?
The CBO, that's a direct quote from the CBO.
You disagree with that our debt went from 36.2 to 39.5? Because I think that's
We have
pretty clear.
We have liabilities in Social Security, Medicare. We have liabilities across the board that are outpacing
Mr. McGarvey,
our sources of revenue.
Those are accurate numbers?
Yes. And in fact, another stat we can look at, the debt of this country from George Washington through Bill Clinton was about $5.7 trillion. The debt from George W. Bush and Donald Trump alone is nearly double that.
Chairman Arrington, isn't it true that you and everybody on the Republican side here voted in favor of a Republican reconciliation bill that is projected to add $4.7 trillion to our nation's debt over the next decade?
Not true.
Another $70 billion that provided funding for ICE and CBP?
The ICE and CBP was simply a replacement of what would have been discretionary funding for ICE and CBP when every Democrat voted to defund
Did
it.
you vote for that?
Of course, I wouldn't defund ICE and CBP. That's,
Chairman Arrington,
yes, sir.
Can you confirm that the plain text of the budget resolution before us right now instructs committees to propose legislation that would increase the deficit by as much as $95 billion with no requirement that it be paid for?
Mr. McGovern, ever since I've been here, and probably for 100 years, when we are in conflict and our military needs supplemental resourcing to keep our troops safe, we have never offset it. And the $200 billion that you and your colleagues gave to Ukraine, that was not offset. So I don't expect we should do this any differently.
Yeah, but you said, I go back to, not paying for our spending is not only irresponsible, it's irrational.
I agree.
Continue to thrust the cost of things that we think are important onto the backs of our kids and our grandkids.
That's correct.
My question is, how can you come before the committee and advocate for spending tens of billions more taxpayer dollars on top of the trillions that you've already added to the deficit while not requiring any of this?
It's a fair question.
Not just the military stuff
Yeah.
and other stuff, why that none of it is paid for?
It's a fair question.
Yeah.
And I think we have to ask ourselves as a Congress why we provide emergency funding, supplemental appropriations for emergencies, because those emergencies require expeditious action, A, and B, if we don't act, we'll spend a lot more money. Now, that doesn't mean we shouldn't budget for emergencies. We need to do a better job of that across the board.
Was it an emergency to give tax breaks to billionaires and millionaires? Because that was not paid for either. Let me ask you,
It was, in fact.
okay, all right. Well,
In fact.
I'm glad, so we just have a disagreement. You think an emergency is making sure that millionaires and billionaires get tax cuts, and big corporations? I just disagree with that. That's a fundamental values question.
I didn't say that just for the record, although some, after a 21% inflation tax, would have said a 22% tax hike would be an emergency for their families.
Yeah, your budget resolution is.
But this guy believes that we should just take all of our taxpayer money and subsidize big insurance companies and just pay these trillion-dollar companies, which we know for a fact that, you know, they have board members that make tens of millions of dollars for doing nothing but sitting on a board, sitting in a boardroom, and figuring out how they can deny your claims, okay? So that's what he is in favor of, just taking taxpayer money and giving it to major insurance companies so they can deny our claims, okay? That is what this guy's in favor of. At least the billionaires that he's talking about, and actually there's not even that many billionaires in the world. There's like 2,500, like how many in America? Maybe 1,500, don't quote me on that. But like, this is like very ridiculous that they keep bringing this up, because I just don't think that that's true, okay? It's stupid to bring that up, but at least some of the billionaires in our country, like for example, Jeff Bezos, at least he's creating tons of jobs. He's creating tons of jobs. Actually, people have been able to become millionaires because of Jeff Bezos and because of Amazon. They can sell their products and get exposure on Amazon, and there's people that are making 7, 8, 9 figures thanks to Jeff Bezos, okay? So why do we need to demonize them? Not saying that Jeff Bezos is the greatest person on earth, whatever, but I have a lot of respect for him.
Instructs the Armed Services Committee to increase the deficit by as much as $60 billion in order to use taxpayer dollars to cover more of the cost of the president's war in Iran. Are you aware that Republicans gave the Department of Defense an extra $150 billion last July?
Yes.
And according to the Trump administration's own numbers, more than half of that money, $75.7 billion, has yet to be spent or even obligated?
I know that we gave $150 billion to the defense of our country.
So given that you've said that our nation's debt is such an existential crisis,
Yes.
Wouldn't you agree that it is irresponsible to spend another $60 billion in taxpayer dollars on Trump's war when you already have $75 billion available?
No, sir, because we were so in the hole after 4 years of a president that didn't have not just regard for our readiness, but for what our troops were focused on. In terms of war fighting, that first $100 billion was to make up for 4 years. Thank God we put that additional monies to prepare for.
$75 billion that hasn't even been obligated yet. I've also submitted an amendment that I hope to offer in the Rules Committee later tonight to use $13 billion out of that $60 billion to add the Major Richard Starr Act to the reconciliation bill. This would help combat wounded veterans get the full support that they're entitled to. Chairman Arrington, would you support making my amendment in order to help these veterans?
We simply unlocked the reconciliation process, Mr. McGovern, and you know the process as well as I do. The policies will be meted out by the authorizing committee chairs, not myself.
But you would have no objection for me offering an amendment and hopefully maybe getting a bipartisan.
I would simply, our focus.
Because if we're not going to pay for this other stuff, the whole issue over the veterans bill that Republicans pulled last week was a lot of the veterans organizations were upset that you were robbing Peter to pay Paul. You were actually cutting veterans benefits on one hand to increase veterans benefits for other groups on the other, and so this would alleviate that. So that's what we're trying to do. Ms. McGarvey, would you be okay with us trying to do that?
No, in fact, I sit on the Veterans Committee, Ranking Member McGovern, and I think this is something where we actually all agree we should be taking care of our veterans. Instead, they are looking to actually take things away from veterans who are suffering from tinnitus, veterans who are suffering, and they're not willing to pay to help them.
So we'll see what happens later today. I think you'd all agree that affordability and the cost of living, whether it's gas prices or child care costs, are some of the top concerns of the American people. The question is, why does this budget resolution not include anything to bring down costs? I mean, you don't have to just take my word for it. On July 15th, a Republican congresswoman from South Carolina described your budget as, quote, $95 billion in new deficit spending, no offsets, and not one provision to lower the cost of living, end quote. So the question is, why doesn't your resolution instruct any committee to propose legislation that would, for example, lower health care costs or help people who have lost their health care coverage regain it?
I would say that the first step in unwinding the cost of living crisis that was created by the failed policies of your party was to stop the wild, reckless, unbridled spending. This administration continues, by the way, a whole of government assault on fraud, not on domestic energy producers, but on fraud. And we cut, like I said, $1.6 trillion in waste. We put pro-growth policies that gave us a 3.8 and a 4.3 growth rates before you shut the government down.
It sounds like we're back to the old, let's blame Joe Biden. Well, why doesn't your resolution instruct any committee to propose legislation that would lower Americans' child care costs? Or why doesn't the resolution instruct any committee to propose legislation that would lower Americans' housing or rent costs? Or why doesn't your resolution instruct any committee to propose legislation that would lower gas prices for Americans' energy bills? I mean, this is kind of the problem in a nutshell, and I'll close with this. You know, when it comes to war and tax cuts for wealthy and big corporations, you guys trip over yourselves to spend tax dollars with no offsets. This is
How come nobody's bringing up the fact that we have been in the war between Ukraine and Russia since Biden first took office? We gave Ukraine so many billions of dollars that Zelensky himself couldn't account for a big chunk of it, had no idea where that money went, okay? And I think are we still helping them? Is that war still going on between Ukraine and Russia? What's going on with that? But nobody has brought that up. They're obsessed with Iran, and I don't really have a comment about that because I don't understand what's going on. I don't know who to trust media-wise, and I don't think we're getting the real information. I don't know why we're at war with them. I don't really believe the nuclear weapon, whatever they tell us. They've been telling us that, since 9/11. I don't really know, so I'm not going to comment on it, whether it's good or bad or whatever. But we haven't been in it for that long, so I don't think that is necessarily what's causing the spike in grocery prices. Grocery prices have gone up egregiously for a long time. I mean, I don't usually notice those things, but I really noticed it probably in 2024. Just looking at what I was paying for the exact same thing, and then in 2024, it was a huge difference, So I don't think that this war is affecting that in a major way. It was going up anyways. Hold on any money for Ukraine stayed in the U.S. to keep our manufacturers in business. I don't know what that means. Yeah, the Iran war is taking too long, Humberto. I was under the understanding when we went into war with Iran that was going to be quick. We were going to go in, get the nuclear weapons or whatever, and then we were coming out. It definitely has gone on a lot longer than most people think. I don't know how much money we've given them. I really don't know. I don't know all the ins and outs of it. But we were having problems with our economy before the Iran war. But either way, we need to give less foreign aid. That's the bottom line. I know everybody likes to talk about certain countries and they're up in arms with how much money we give to certain Middle Eastern countries, but the reality is we should not really give money to any of these countries, not when we have so many problems at home. I think most Americans would agree our money needs to stay in the U.S. That's the bottom line. We need to take care of our home, and we don't. There's so many issues in our country, and people are struggling, and just the land itself needs help. We have so many homeless people on the street and growing. We have major drug problems and drug addiction all over our country, and people literally doing drugs on the streets, sleeping on the sidewalk, okay? We should not have the audacity to take our money and just give it away. That's just ignoring the problems that are right in front of us. We need to either stop taxing us and let us, do things for ourselves, or take the money that they're getting and use it for the U.S. We have a lot of problems. We need help. And we certainly should not be taking budget advice or credit advice from the Senate or the Congress. This is a joke. They can't even follow their own budget for a full year.
your MO. But when it comes to helping American families, Republicans think it would be wasteful spending. I got to tell you, I still do in-person town halls. I don't know about you, but I do. And all people want to talk about is the high cost of living. They can't afford their rents, can't afford to buy homes, childcare costs are out of control, healthcare costs are out of control. They want to know why the hell aren't we focused in on that? And instead, we're focused in on, giving the well-off and the well-connected even more. I think people have had it. And I think that's one of the reasons why you're going to see every Democrat oppose this. And I hope some Republicans who care about fiscal responsibility will oppose it as well. I yield back.
So we talked a little bit about Amazon and Jeff Bezos, and some people were making comments in the chat. So I just want to back up some of the things that I said with some facts, because I do believe that Amazon and Bezos do a lot for our country and society and creating jobs. So let me tell you all the different ways that people can make money from Amazon. So they have the Amazon Flex Driver program. No, can't find on the internet how many people total do this, but Amazon says they pay $18 to $25 an hour, and it looks like people do this part-time. So the average flex driver is making about just under $1,300 a month. So you can make, roughly 30 to 50K being an Amazon flex driver. Then there's something called a DSP owner. This is there's 2,500 small business partners in Amazon's published materials. So Amazon currently advertises that they make between 100K and 400K annual profit for established DSPs. So people that are publishing things on Amazon, it looks like you can make over $400,000 per year if you do it right. DSP delivery driver. So Amazon has hundreds of thousands of these DSP drivers. Looks like there's just under 400,000 DSP drivers. And the wage varies depending on the market or the employer. So I'm not sure how much people make per hour, but it does employ over close to 400,000 people. Then there is the Amazon third-party seller. And we have close to 550,000 active sellers in the U.S. And Amazon says that U.S. sellers average just under $375,000 a year in sales in 2025. So also, over 75,000 of these third-party sellers have made over $1 million annually in Amazon sales, okay? Over 75,000 people in America, that's a lot. They have an influencer program, so Amazon influencers, they don't publish how many participate in that. And it really varies. People make anywhere, it says 0 to 6 figures. I do know some people that have made over 6 figures being an Amazon influencer. Then there's something called an Amazon associate. Again, they don't publish how many people are in that. And I think that just depends on the traffic. This is somebody that they're not creating like UGC videos or something, but they are like posting stuff online. So you click on their link and basically like an affiliate. And then there's a KDP author publisher. Again, they don't publish how many, but Kindle Unlimited alone paid authors $67 million in June 2026. I'll tell you guys, I actually did make a little bit of money. I just published a book. It's called The Effortlessly Slim Mindset on Amazon Kindle. I published it 6 weeks ago, but I did make a little bit of money. I got paid out in June, so I'm part of that Kindle Unlimited publisher. But again, it just depends on a lot of factors. But come on, guys. $67 million. I think he's doing some good stuff for Americans. And then there's also the merch on demand. Again, they don't publish how many people do that. So that's like when you order a shirt and they're able to create it when you order it and then ship it to you. It does depend on the royalties, but people can make upwards of 6 figures being a merch on demand Amazon seller. So, I think that's really cool. Like, I just rattled off over well, I mean, probably because they don't advertise like the publishers and whatnot, but this is like millions of people that they're giving an income stream to, okay? So say what you want about Jeff Bezos. Maybe you think he's the Antichrist and he's evil and greedy or whatever, but the truth is, a lot of people have jobs and a lot of people make money because of him, and a lot of people have like much more convenient lives, me especially, thanks to Amazon delivery, okay? So you got to give him credit where credit's due.
Thank you, Mr. McGovern. Mr. Scott, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Anthony.
Mr. Arrington, I personally believe that we won the last election because Americans wanted us to secure the border and stop the tax increase. I mean, the millions upon millions of people that were allowed to come into this country unchecked, intentionally unchecked by the Biden administration at the behest of the Democrat Socialist movement, has had a tremendous cost to us. But we were secure, we were elected to secure the border and stop the tax increase from the Democratic Party.
That's right.
And the Democratic Party, we stopped their tax increase. We didn't actually reduce the rate for millionaires, am I correct? Like, no millionaire's tax rate went down. They just didn't get the tax increase that the Democrats wanted them to get. Is that correct?
Well, the 92% of the American people who are working people, I would suggest, 92% that take a standard deduction
absolutely.
actually got another tax break, as did working people who work overtime, work for tips, et cetera.
If you're working for tips, I eat at Waffle House on a regular basis, not as fancy as some of the places most members eat at, but I enjoy Waffle House with my family.
But you guys are like forgetting the whole thing. Somebody said it's like saying McDonald's employees. Well, first of all, I didn't say anything about factory workers because that's a different topic. The point I was trying to make and what I rattled off had to do with how Amazon creates jobs for people that are not W-2s, okay? These are people that are working part-time or they can make it their full-time job, but it's allowing the American people to become more free and have other streams of income. That was the point of it. You guys forget that like you have choices in life. Nobody is making anybody work at Amazon or work at McDonald's, okay? Or Walmart, whatever. People have choices. You have a choice to work there or not. So if you don't like what they pay you, you can work somewhere else. Start your own business. That is the beauty of America. It really sucks that our cost of living is so high here. And that is the problem, in my opinion. It's not necessarily how much you're getting paid per hour. It doesn't matter how much you're getting paid per hour if your cost of living is just through the roof and everything is going up. And that is the truth, guys. Everything is going up in America, and that's why it's getting a little scary here, because it's not just groceries and gas. It's like groceries, gas, insurance, utilities, water, homeowners, insurance, tax, home tax, and whatnot. And then our taxes go up. Everything is going up. And we can't just blame the government for that, because when we do, we just like release our own power. We've allowed this to happen. We have. We also have the power to get it under control. But we're not going to do it arguing with each other and blaming Jeff Bezos.
You're working overtime, you got a nice tax cut. Our senior citizens are getting a tax credit on the Social Security side because of some budget rules that we have to comply with. That's the way that was done. But we were elected to secure the border and stop the tax increase that the Democrats wanted. And the end result of stopping the tax increases, and this doesn't get talked about enough, I don't believe, but my understanding, according to CBO, tax revenue in the United States is higher than it's ever been in the history of the country. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And actually, and you may not exactly know this number, but I looked it up, revenue for 2026 is 17.5% of GDP. The 50-year average is 17.3%.
Yeah.
So just factually speaking, if you want more money, you have to grow the GDP of the country. You don't grow the GDP of the country taking all of the capital out of the private sector and depositing it in accounts where, fraudsters are able to go get it, and nobody at the state level in certain states, Democratic states like Minnesota, want to do anything about it.
That's right.
And so the one thing that I would tell you that I wish we had done, I think the other thing people want us to do was to cut spending. And it's pretty clear to me that if you look at the fraud that is occurring throughout the United States, that simply stopping the people that should not be getting assistance from stealing assistance, or dollars, I should say, from the U.S. government. I mean, my understanding is CBO came out was it CBO or Congressional Research?
CBO.
One of our people came out and said, for every dollar you put into fraud prevention,
That's right.
it would generate a $7 return on the investment.
That's
Is that
correct. That's correct. Because we have $500 billion, according to GAO, on the high side, but hundreds of billions for sure in fraud leaking out every year of this government.
And of course, the Democrats are defending the fraudsters. I mean, that's what's happening. They don't want us to cut spending. We could get all of the cuts that we wanted simply by getting rid of the fraud in this country, I believe, at least the vast majority of them.
The enhanced COVID tax credits for Obamacare that they wanted to shut the government down over.
Oh, yeah.
There were tens of billions, according to GAO and CBO, in fraud, and some of that was tens of thousands of Social Security numbers from dead people.
Yep. All of that money was going to the insurance carriers,
That's correct.
not to the hospitals, correct?
That's correct.
This is
And
what
so
I
they
told
blame,
you.
the challenge of the that local hospitals are having. And I'm getting some reports together on what is actually happening at local hospitals. But the fact of the matter is Medicare Advantage plans aren't paying their claims and other things. And because of the way the Democrats have done things, there's no mechanism to force these gargantuan insurance carriers to actually pay the claims that they owe the local hospitals. I'm getting together some reports on that. But I just...
Okay, so I wasn't aware of this, but this was very important what he just said. We have an issue where local hospitals are not getting their claims paid because of Medicare Advantage plans not paying their claims. That's a big deal. And I just want to explain real quick how Medicare Advantage works. So when you have Medicare, when you're eligible for Medicare, you have Part A, you have Part B. It's called Original Medicare. But Part A and Part B, they don't cover 100%. They cover 80%, and you are liable for the 20%. You have $1 million hospital stay, you're liable for $200K at 20%. So most people get what's called either a Medigap plan or Part C, which is Medicare Advantage. And Medicare Advantage, I know that Medicare Advantage is a little bit more popular than a Medicare supplement. Medicare Advantage are typically zero premium, and if you're somebody that's a dual, a D-SNP, you have Medicare and Medicaid at the same time, you have to be on Part C, because Medicare supplements you pay out of pocket for. But anyways, when somebody goes on Part C, on Medicare Advantage, now Original Medicare is not their primary source. So what the government does is it pays the insurance carrier that the client is on. So let's say Humana or United. If United is your Medicare Advantage plan, now you have to stick within the rules of United, and that could mean you're on an HMO, and they decide who you go to, and you have to get things pre-certified, and they are responsible for your claims. But our government pays them $13,000 or more per participant on the Medicare Advantage plan. Some plans, if the patient has Medicare, Medicaid, and like a chronic illness, they can get like $35,000 plus just from the government for insuring this person, okay? So they're taking our money, our taxpayer money, giving it to the Medicare Advantage carriers. And now what he is saying, these carriers are not paying the claims, okay? They're not paying the claims. So I just want you guys to process this, okay? Because this is who the left is defending. When they talk about how evil the Republicans are for taking away health care. It's not what they're really talking about. They're upset because their buddies at big insurance aren't getting their subsidies. And if they don't get their subsidies, then they have less money to give to their campaigns or whatever else type of kickbacks they get. I don't know if that's true or not. Maybe all of our politicians are Boy Scouts and they don't take any money and they're not corrupt whatsoever, whatever. No, it's not Medicare's fault. I'm not blaming Medicare at all. It's not Medicare's fault whatsoever. Because when you're on a Medicare Advantage plan, you're not really on Medicare anymore. Medicare paid the carrier of the Medicare Advantage to now handle your claims. So I don't blame Medicare. I'm blaming the insurance companies, number one, because they should be paying the claims. It's not nonsense. If you don't believe me, look it up. Just look it up. You don't have to be mean and criticize me for walking on a treadmill. I know it's very offensive to some people, the fact that I'm walking or exercising while streaming. That gets you guys every time. Sorry, I'm not sitting on my ass and stuffing my face while I stream. But anyways, if you don't believe me, go to cms.gov. Look at the stuff for yourself, okay? I'm not making this up. These are facts. Just look for yourself, okay? Even ask ChatGPT, I don't know, ask Wikipedia. Do something, but don't sit there and say that it's nonsense. It's the truth. That's how it works. I've been a licensed insurance agent since 2015. Every year, if I want to sell Medicare Advantage plans, I have to pay for continuing education, and I have to take a very difficult test that they only allow 3 attempts to take to pass and get certified to sell those products. And then every single carrier I'm appointed with, I have to take hours and hours of certifications in order to sell their product. So as an agent, I have to do this training every single year. So please don't tell me that this is nonsense. But that's the truth. We, because it is American taxpayers and Medicare, pay Medicare Advantage carriers a hefty amount of money per year to take over somebody's health insurance, okay? So they're not participating in original Medicare per se anymore. And now our Congress is telling us that Medicare Advantage companies have a problem paying their hospital claims. They deny claims and they're not paying their claims. Don't you guys think that that's a problem? Because they get paid a lot. Don't you think that's a problem that your claims aren't being paid?
Just want to get back to some basics. I mean, the fact of the matter is, we were elected to secure the border and stop the tax increase. We did that. They can scream that billionaires got a lower tax rate and all of that. It's just nonsense. But the main thing is, with regard to the economy, the taxpayers need to understand, tax revenues are higher than they've ever been in the history of the country.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And if you're going to bend the curve on the debt to GDP, which is the measure of our fiscal health, which we have lowered, the deficit is the input to the debt, and that's gone down for the first time in a decade, you have to do 2 things. What we did to root out waste and fraud and save money, and pro-growth policies that ignite the growth that we've seen. As I've said, 1% over CBO's projections gives us $3 trillion in deficit reduction.
The final thing I want to say is about the war with Iran. Every president, whether they be Democrat or Republican, has recognized the threat of Iran obtaining a nuclear weapon. There is no civilian purpose for uranium enrichment beyond 20%. You could say 5, but we'll stretch it and say 20. No civilian use beyond 20. It's widely accepted in the international community that Iran was far beyond the 20% of enrichment and was continuing to enrich beyond those levels. Had President Trump not done what he did, Iran would have had a nuclear weapon within a short period of time. And they already had the ability to make, dirty bomb. They had enough enrichment to create a tremendous amount of damage throughout the world. And the fact of the matter is the majority of terrorism throughout the world, Iran has something to do with, whether it be sponsoring with intelligence or with weapons. Iran, it's a country run by jihadists, and I'm glad our president has the balls to do something about it. And with that, Madam Chair, I yield.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Ms. Scanlon, you're recognized.
Thank you. I'd yield first to the ranking member.
Well, thank you. I just want to say that, listening to my colleague, Mr. Scott, I think maybe this is the biggest difference between Democrats and Republicans. You think that people in this country should be happy, that they should be grateful for all that they received under Republican leadership and under the leadership of Donald Trump. I will say to you, go to any coffee shop in this country, go to any VFW hall, go to any union hall, go to any workplace and talk to regular people about what's on their mind, and they will tell you the issue of affordability is front and center.
I do that. I see them at,
People
I see
cannot
them at
af-
Waffle
people
House,
cannot afford-
Walmart, and other places, Mr.
People-
McGovern.
well,
Most of the
yeah.
Americans I know recognize how blessed they are to live in this country and do not want a socialist takeover like the Democratic Party has allowed.
Well, and they don't want a fascist takeover by the Republican Party either. You want to go down that road? I'll go down that road. All right? As we inch toward authoritarianism, you know what? People are sick of that too. They're frightened of a president whose ego is so fragile that he can't admit he lost an election and promotes all this wacky propaganda that scares the hell out of the average voter, including a lot of Republicans. And I would also just say one thing on Iran. The Strait of Hormuz was open, and oil prices were coming down before this president launched this war, and now Strait is closed, gas prices are going up, which is also an affordability issue. So I'm sorry, you think people
Gas prices are still lower than they would be if Kamala Harris had been elected.
No, that's just that's ridiculous. But anyway, but the bottom line is, you go down this road of you go now keep thinking that people are happy and they should be grateful. I will tell you, you will find out in November. People are sick of this. And by the way, when you say that the tax cuts didn't help people who are rich, I mean, Donald Trump was up there bragging about the fact that one of his closest friends was able to buy a new private jet with the money he saved on the tax cuts. I don't know anybody who owns a private jet. I don't hang around with those people like maybe you guys do. But the bottom line is that average working people in this country feel they're getting screwed, and they've had it, and they want to know why we're not focused more like a laser beam on the issues of affordability.
I think working people in this country.
Yeah, I agree. I think we should be focused on affordability, but I also don't think that the answer to affordability is taking more money away from the taxpayer and the working class and subsidizing illegal immigrants. I just don't think that that is the answer. I don't think the answer is taking more money from us and giving it to these people that do not know how to stay within a budget that they create. They don't even know how to stick to it. They have to have hearings throughout the year to figure out where to get more money so they can stay open. Okay? I don't want to take money or financial advice from these people. They don't do a good job. They really don't. So I agree with him. Yeah, we should be focused on why America is the richest country, why we as Americans make so much more money compared to other countries, but why our cost of living is so egregiously high that everybody feels like they're living week to week. So yeah, we should address that, but we need real solutions, real answers, not political theater, and the answer can't always be more taxes, more money. Because even if they just tax the rich or tax the corporations, it always ends back on the American people. Because if you're taxing a corporation, for instance, they don't want their profits to go down. They're just going to hire the prices, so we end up paying it in the end. That's just what happens. That's historically what has happened. So I don't think that giving them more money is the solution. I think we could figure out some real solutions, but this isn't it.
Love this country. Don't want a
Reclaiming my
socialist takeover.
time. Thank you, Mr. Scott. I do have to agree with the ranking member. I mean, at a time when the price of gas and groceries and healthcare keeps climbing, you might think Republicans would come to Congress with a plan to help working families. Instead, they're back with a third partisan budget bill. And once again, it's completely missing the moment for my constituents, I think for most Americans. This budget resolution paves the way for nearly $95 billion to be added to the deficit. That's on top of the trillions that have already been added by this administration through its misguided tax cuts and the prior reconciliation bills. Look, more than $70 billion would bankroll the president's ill-conceived, senseless war. I mean, that's the monetary damage on top of the deaths that we're already seeing. It is the most unpopular war in American history, and presumably some portion of that will go to fund Pete Hegseth's obsession with the testosterone levels of members of our military. Another $10 billion is going to fund Republicans' wild goose chase of a voter suppression bill, the SAVE Act, that would restrict access to the ballot for
So I think that this is very disgusting that the Dems twist this. Because the truth is, we have to have safe and secure elections. I don't care what party you're for, but it is ridiculous to say that it's a waste of money to have safe and fair elections. Like, that's why we're America. That's like one of the premises behind America, is that we can vote and our vote counts. And it's also very ridiculous that they're so appalled that we should require ID when you vote, and that that's somehow racist to require ID, or it's somehow a bad thing that election day should be one day. It should not be counted for 2 weeks. It should be one day. I know we can make it happen. I know it's possible because they do it in huge states like Florida every year now. I mean, truly, I'm a libertarian, to be honest, but I also can acknowledge that America's not ready for a libertarian world, okay? I'm so stupid. Another Jacqueline, I'm Jacqueline also. You're so stupid, it's not even funny. Thank you so much for your comments, because every comment really boosts my engagement, so thank you very much. And I would love to know why you think I'm stupid. Please share with the chat. We're all reading. But anyways, it is so important that we have voter ID for our elections. Every other place you go to requires ID, okay? I saw a video today that's saying when you go to the Olive Garden, I think this is wrong though, but somebody said when you go to the Olive Garden and you get like the unlimited bread and salad that they require an ID, but I don't think that's true. But most restaurants, like if you go and you want to get a drink or something, you have to use your ID. Most places require your ID. Why wouldn't we want ID when you go to vote to ensure that you're an American citizen, that you're able to legally vote? Why wouldn't we want to protect every single person's vote? The only reason I can think of why Democrats do not want this is because that they have to cheat. They can't win unless they cheat. And this is a way that they cheat, that they just let illegal people vote because there's no oversight and you can be illegal and you can just vote. And that's how they win. Otherwise, I don't understand why you wouldn't want that.
Millions of Americans with provisions that even Republicans acknowledge are unlikely to survive Senate reconciliation rules. It's interesting to hear our Republican colleagues try to justify that bill. They don't say that it's necessary to actually prevent election fraud or even voting by non-citizens, because that's not true. Those things aren't happening at the levels they claim. No, what they say is that the bill is necessary because Americans are concerned about the security of our elections. Well, of course they are. The president's been lying to them about that for nearly a decade. But back to the main point on this, not $1 is devoted to lowering the cost of groceries, reducing healthcare costs, or slashing skyrocketing energy prices. Republicans keep promising to lower costs, but instead they keep shifting the economic burdens to consumers through tariffs, through giveaways to billionaires and big business. The only kind of welfare they seem interested in is corporate welfare, and boy, are we seeing a lot of that. So apparently there's always more money for war or to clean up some of the economic damage caused by this administration. If Republicans were serious about helping American families, they would be working to actually lower costs, strengthen health care, invest in our communities through housing, through childcare, through all the things that Americans actually need, rather than golden ballrooms and ripped up reflecting pools and golden arches and all the other crap that keeps getting proposed by this administration. So Mr. McGovern.
I'd rather have a beautiful ballroom in the White House than send like $400 billion to the Ukraine that Zelensky can't even tell us where that went. I mean, it's such a joke that they would have the audacity, that actually anybody in Congress, Republican or Democrat, would have the audacity to talk about wasting money. Because these people that we have elected into our governments, they are the biggest time, energy, and money wasters I have ever seen in my life. It's really alarming. When we first came on, I don't remember her name, but she was saying we need term limits. We absolutely need term limits. 100% do we need term limits. Some of these people are just straight up a joke, literally doing the exact opposite that they're preaching about and yelling that this side's doing this and they're evil and corrupt, but behind the scenes they're doing the exact same thing. We have to stop electing these people, number one. We need to stop consenting to this. It's madness.
Garvey, I sense that you have some remarks you'd like to add in response to some of the nonsense we've been hearing.
Thank you, Ms. Scanlon. I appreciate your remarks. I wanted to go to some of the things that Mr. Scott addressed specifically about fraud and about the actual budget and the tax cuts themselves. We all agree, right? Let's get rid of the fraud. Let's get rid of fraud. Let's get rid of fraud. Let's get rid of waste. Let's get rid of abuse. Let's also remember what this administration is labeling as fraud or labeling as abuse. Director Vogt came in front of our committee, Mr. Chairman, and he answered our questions, because the thing about a budget is you can talk about things all you want. In a budget, it's actually written down what you like and what you value. So he said there was fraud in the LIHEAP program, LIHEAP, Low Income Home Energy Assistance Program, right? But he didn't find the fraud in the program. He zeroed it out completely. There are over 100,000 seniors in Kentucky who rely on this program to keep their homes warm in the winter, and right now when it is blazing hot in Kentucky, to keep it cool in summer. This can be life or death. He couldn't answer whether it's fraud for every single senior in Kentucky who uses this program. It is not a serious attempt. What they're trying to do is find little offsets that impact the people who are our neighbors, who live in our areas every single day, and they're trying to cut those so that they can pave the way for the wealthy tax cuts that they have put in place. Now, Mr. Scott, I'm from Kentucky. I love Waffle House. In fact, if they serve bourbon, I don't think I'd ever leave. But what you need to do is explain the tax cuts to the people at Waffle House the next time you're there, because in this budget, there were $4.7 trillion in tax cuts. The wealthiest Americans got over 50% of that. If you make $1 million in America under these tax cuts, by 2027, you will have $100,000 more in your pocket. But let's look at what we did for the people who work at Waffle House. There is no tax on overtime. There is no tax on tips. What does that actually mean? Because these tax cuts for the wealthiest Americans, they are permanent. They're not going anywhere unless we can change it. The no tax on overtime, no tax on tips, it sunsets. They expire after 3 years. And what are they actually? If the person at Waffle House doesn't want to have a tax on their tips, what do they now have to do? Under this bill, they have to itemize their deductions. They itemize their deductions. It sunsets after 3 years. There's also a $25,000 cap in this. When you itemize your deductions on tips, you actually lose the $15,000 standard deduction you get right now. This is no tax on $9,900 worth of tips for 3 years, but if you make $1 million, you get $100,000, or if you're a low-income senior, they're zeroing out your programs, they're taking food off the table, they're making health insurance less and less affordable for every single American, and that's the numbers and the impact that are in this bill.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And it just galls me every time our colleagues start talking about fraud when the actions of this administration show that that is not the focus, or at least not the focus with respect to the people who are committing massive fraud. I mean, if you just look at the fact that the administration has canned most of the inspectors general, whose job it is to actually investigate and prosecute fraud, waste, and abuse, and have been doing a really good job at that up till now. When you look at the pardons that this administration has made for corporate tycoons who have defrauded Americans out of billions of dollars, and then they get a get-out-of-jail-free pass, which also removes their obligation to repay the seniors and the veterans and the folks who were defrauded. And finally, I guess in addition to that, you see the folks who've had their charges dropped when they've made sizable donations to either the president's campaign funds or his library or one of his golden ballrooms or something like that. And then finally, you just look at the front page of the Wall Street Journal today, which says Justice Department pulls back on pursuing corporate crime. They've sent all their folks out to track down day workers at Home Depot, and they are not going after corporate crime. They're not going after drug traffickers. They're not going after human traffickers. And they're sure as heck not going after folks in our government who are defrauding the American people. So I thank you for your work on this, and I yield back.
Thank you, Ms. Scanlon. Mr. Griffith, you're right.
I'll say this. I agree with her. We need to go after the people in our government that commit fraud. And we don't. And I think that fraud continues because we give not only politicians, but government workers get a pass. We never investigate them when they mess up or they make these like major, improper payments or erroneous payments, or somehow allow all of these legal or illegal immigrants to get paid millions of dollars for autism and daycare, and there's like 100 different daycare companies in one building. Like, who green-lighted that? Where's the oversight? I want that person to get in trouble. Everybody that approved that didn't look into it, that allowed the fraud to take place. I think that there should be some oversight and a reckoning with those people. So I agree with her. I would love to see people that work for the government be held accountable for their actions.
Recognized. Thank you. Ms. Leisure Fernandez, you're recognized.
Hello. Thank you very much. Good to see you, Chairman, and good to see you, Ranking. You're the ranking member here today, Margaret McGarvey. And thank you for the explanation about the fact that it's not really working people, it's not seniors, it's not people who pay taxes who have benefited from the deficit spending that we have seen the Republicans engage in the last 18 months. And that's really what's key here is this is deficit spending. Chairman Arrington, you've seen this chart. I think you and I have discussed this chart before because it shows that Republicans like talking about the deficit, but really what Republicans like doing is increasing the deficit. And every year, every presidency under Reagan, H.W. Bush, the deficit went up, not by a lot under those two. It went down during Clinton. During W. Bush, it went up, went down during Obama, and then, boy, under Trump, it just soared. Came down a bit under Biden, and now you actually have the distinction of being able to serve as chairman of the Budget Committee and will be able to retire and claim as one of, I think, your accomplishments that you have added to that deficit spending. And this bill before us is going to add to that legacy of deficit spending by Republican presidencies if it ever got passed into law. And what we're hearing is that we're finally maybe some of the, they call them hardliners, I don't know what the right name for it is, but people who say it's not good to do deficit spending are saying, wait a minute, there's no pay-fors in here. There were no pay-fors in the $70 billion that we passed last month either. Do you remember by how much Trump raised the debt in his first term, Chairman Arrington?
The debt has gone up by too much under presidents in recent times, mainly because of the unfunded liability and entitlements that are on automatic spending. And just to be clear, we have a crisis of a balance sheet that has $140 trillion that will be brought to bear on that balance sheet without the funding to deliver on the promises in those entitlements. That's the biggest reason it's increasing on everyone's watch. But no one in 10 years, to my colleague and friend from New Mexico, in 10 years, no party, no budget chairman, no president has worked to reduce the deficit to GDP like the House Republicans and this president, and CBO has confirmed that. It's over 10%, and it's because we reduced wasteful spending by $2.5 trillion. It's because of the Fiscal Responsibility Act that we forced Democrats to the table to negotiate and have saved to date $500 billion just keeping discretionary spending flat. And it's because we had paltry growth at a 1.8 in the last quarter of President Biden. We had a 3.8 and 4.3 growth rate. That is tremendous. That is until Democrats shut the government down to expand a fraud-ridden COVID-era program that they said was temporary, that would cost $130 billion with no pay for
Chairman
it.
Arrington was, the question was a simple question, which was how much did President Trump increase the deficit?
Less than Joe Biden did and under Democrat control.
Actually not true at all. It was by $8.4 trillion, and Joe Biden actually brought he brought it down. So actually, when you look at the numbers, and this is the issue, is that when you look at the rhetoric.
What's the source of that chart?
When you look at the rhetoric, we'll actually, what? United States Treasury, I don't know if you.
Yeah,
If you agree
I've heard
with
of
the
them.
United States Treasury, but.
Yeah, you
this is
can-
Part from the United States Treasury.
If I may, just to
handed it
fact check, the interest on the debt, which tripled, okay, from $350 billion to $1 trillion under President Biden because the spending created record 40-year inflation, interest rates soared, and so if you add the extra cost and interest, it's $12 trillion magically.
That's the
I
issue,
yield.
that the rhetoric of Republicans
It's the facts.
on the deficit does not match the numbers. And I think that that's the issue that we keep bringing up. And what are you doing it for?
Who cares? Who cares? We've had a deficit and been in debt for a long time. This back and forth nonsense for 10 minutes, is that helping? No. We need to get these people out. They should not be making our budgets. Who are we electing? Somebody wrote in here that one of the primary jobs in Congress is to basically be like an accountant for the American people and our taxes. Oh my God, are we electing the wrong people? And continuing to allow them to serve. We need to do like what the government does and what a lot of employers do. Like you have like either a 90-day or sometimes they give you like a year or like a 2-year probation period. I think we need to start implementing that for our elected officials. I think they need like a 90 to 180-day probationary period. And if they aren't doing what they said that they were going to do, if they're actively growing our deficit, they need to get out. They need to get out. How do we elect these people to do this job that they can't even do? They can't even do it. Who are we electing? Like now I'm really going to pay attention to some of these elections because I don't want this issue to continue. Like, I'm not going to say how I really feel about attorneys. I'm not an attorney. My husband is. So I'm not even going to go there. But the majority of Congress are attorneys. And we think that, oh, that's a good thing because they know how to understand and interpret the law. That's not what Congress does 100% though. You know, maybe those attorneys need to stay within the judicial branch. Maybe we need to start thinking about bringing people that are CFOs and accountants and CEOs and COOs and people in like financial planning and insurance. Those type of people would be great to sit in Congress because they know what they're talking about. They know what they're doing. But I think that we've allowed this to go way too far, just electing the majority of attorneys into office because they really know how to give a good song and dance. You know, they learn that in law school, especially if they're like trial attorneys. They know how to tell a good story. That's what makes somebody a really, really good trial attorney. You know how to tell a good story. Look up that famous attorney, Jerry Spence. That was something that he is known for. He is a great storyteller, and a great trial attorney is a great storyteller. And this is what we're seeing live. But in my opinion, this is not who needs to run our budget. Not at all. Not at all. I'm definitely going to be doing my due diligence from now on into the future. This has been so eye-opening since I took over this channel in June. Just streaming these hearings, and I've been streaming a lot of different ones that Mr. Dave didn't do. He used to just do oversight and like judicial hearings. But I try to stream everything that I think is interesting. I want to learn about the government, and I think most of you do as well. And geez, these are very eye-opening hearings, and I'm so happy that you guys are joining me every night, because I feel like we're learning a lot, because nobody else is streaming these for the most part. Like, the mainstream media really does not report on the majority of the hearings.
Right? The $4.7 trillion price tag that the CBO has told us the first reconciliation cost us, the first reconciliation. Who are the big beneficiaries? And we heard Representative McGarvey point that out. They were the millionaires. They were the billionaires. And we brought amendments in this Rules Committee to say, hey, how about if we let the middle income tax cuts stay? We extend those. And instead say no tax cuts if you're earning over $1 billion. They said no. How about over $500 million? They said no. Republicans continuously tell us where their priorities are. And the last $70 billion was for ICE. And what's happened in the last 2 weeks?
They lose me when they talk about ICE, because I just think we need to give more money to ICE. I think Donald Trump is doing a terrible job with ICE. I think that he's letting the left and the mainstream media get out of hand with the propaganda and not doing the job that he promised he would do. I also think it's wrong that anybody in ICE is going after people that have like been in this country for decades, okay? Nobody cares about somebody's like abuela being here illegally. She's not the problem. She's not the problem. I thought that Trump's initiative would be to get rid of the people that came in over the last 4 years. We had over 10 million people illegally come to this country, and we had a hard time accounting for them. And supposedly there's missing kids, and there was kids coming over here, you know, with strange men, not even their parents. Like, I thought that those were the people that are going to be removed from the U.S. We were told that there's gang members, cartels, military-aged men from Africa and Middle Eastern countries, okay? We were scared for years that this is who's coming into our country. Those are the people that I want them to go after. Why are they, like, interrupting people's, like, graduations? And I don't understand that. So I don't agree with that. I don't think he's doing a good job with ICE. I really don't. I know some Republicans love that, but I think he needs to have a sit down with President Obama, the deporter in chief, figure out what Obama did to successfully deport illegals. That's what I think Trump should do.
More shootings in the streets, murders, killings in the streets, because Republicans refuse to put any guardrails on. And I think that that's what we're facing here is you celebrate what came out of the One Big Beautiful Bill. You don't like the name anymore because you changed the name. But what really came out of there is how many people lost access to medical coverage. Do you know that, Representative McGarvey?
How many people lost access
To medical coverage after passage of the One Big Beautiful.
Nobody lost coverage. Nobody lost access to coverage. Anybody can go on the marketplace during open enrollment and enroll in insurance on the marketplace. Nobody lost insurance. Nobody did. Maybe you lost some of your subsidy, and maybe you can't afford Obamacare anymore because the government isn't subsidizing you anymore. But that's their fault because by subsidizing you, they allowed the premiums and the max out of pockets to skyrocket. And so nobody can afford it unless they're getting a government subsidy. This is not BS. This is a fact. Just go look it up, okay? Just go look it up. That's not losing insurance. That's not getting a subsidy. That's not losing it. You have a choice. You can pay for it or not. You can also get a private plan. There's a lot of those out there that people don't even know about, and they're much more affordable than Obamacare. But the American Rescue Act, where we were giving out all these crazy subsidies, that was never meant to be permanent. It was never meant to be permanent. It was supposed to help Americans during the lockdowns, okay? And they just kept expanding it and stretching it out. And then we created a monster with insurance companies that allowed them to charge ridiculous pricing for premiums. Nobody should have a $2,000, $3,000, $6,000 a month premium. That's not affordable, guys. And whether you pay out of your pocket or the government pays, the government is not paying. We're the government. We are the government. They did expand it. They expanded Medicaid. That was part of it. It was expanded. It was extended and it was expanded. But we are the government. Our tax money, even if you're low income, okay? Even if you're low income and you're getting benefits, you still pay taxes on things, okay? So you're getting taxed. You're getting taxed in multiple ways. That's still our money. So when they say that, it's just not true. And it doesn't solve anything to keep saying that line over and over, because I don't think that we're ever going to get those back. We're not going to get those subsidies back. We just aren't. It's not going to happen. But why can't we just address the elephant in the room? One, why have we allowed health insurance companies to charge so much money per month for premiums? Why? Two, why do we allow these insurance companies to collect that money from us and from Medicare and not pay the claims to the hospitals and the providers? And three, why is healthcare so expensive in the United States? Why is it so expensive? Why do you have to have insurance? Why can't you negotiate with your doctor or your hospital for procedures? But why is one procedure, $70,000, an outpatient surgery? Why is it that much? Why is your wellness bill $5,000? Why is an MRI $15,000? Okay? Those are the questions that we need to be asking. Not continue to take more money from us and subsidize insurance companies. Okay, guys? Please use your heads.
Bill.
It is thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people.
5 million
Yeah.
people. 5 million people. And if we actually
And also, too, there are programs out there that you can utilize if you don't have insurance. You can go to your local Department of Health. They have a sliding scale for visits and for different procedures. They offer dental. They do vaccinations for free. Some places you can call ahead, schedule it. You can, pick and choose what vaccinations you want to get. So there are other resources out there. There's a lot of resources, but if you listen to the news and you listen to the left, you think that it's Obamacare, Medicaid, or employer coverage or nothing. And that's not true. We need to stop participating in this system. It's fixed. It's not good for anybody. It needs a complete revamp and overhaul. But the thing is nobody on the left or the right has any plans to improve Obamacare or health insurance in this country. Nobody has any plans. And that is more shocking to me than anything. There's just no solutions right now. So they just argue back and forth, but they give us no solutions. We need a solution. And also, we should not allow corporations or individuals to profit off our health or our demise. We should be treated like humans. We deserve respect. We deserve dignity. We should not have these hospital systems salivating when we go in for simple procedures and just racking up our insurance, or we should certainly not incentivize hospitals to get paid more if we die from COVID or any other death. Why is our healthcare so profitable for big corporations? I think that is a major problem. You know, I believe in capitalism, but I just think that there's certain things that should not be a part of capitalism. I think, again, we deserve to live and be healthy and have dignity. And that's all I'm going to say about that.
They took what they intend to spend on war. We could extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits for, I think it's 3 years. So the people who are losing access to health care, they're all working families, right? And instead they want more war. And I think that that's the issue that we're concerned about. And I don't know if you want to talk a little bit more about why these priorities, these budget priorities of the Republicans are hurting Americans' access to health care. And they're doing nothing to lower the cost for everyday Americans.
Yeah, I mean, the stories that are coming into our offices, they're real and they're heart-wrenching. I had a woman from Louisville, Kentucky. Her name's Ann. She called my office, and she works 2 jobs. One of them, she owns her own business. Her husband also is an independent contractor. They have a 19-year-old son who lives at their home while trying to go to the University of Louisville because he's disabled. Her health insurance premiums cost $325 a month under the silver plan of the Affordable Care Act. Because of the Republicans' actions in these budget bills, her premiums are going up to $1,275.
But that's not the Republicans' fault. They didn't create that premium. The insurance companies did. And the state insurance boards approve those premiums. Maybe states shouldn't approve those egregious premiums. We should not have to continue to subsidize with our taxpayer money that doesn't get to the root of the problem. It makes it worse. It makes it worse. So I'm really tired of hearing this narrative from the left because it tricks you. It tricks you to think that they want to help, but what they're doing is hurting us, and it's hurt us over the last decade plus. This is not a good system. It's not helpful to anybody. We're losing because of this. Again, the only people that are winning with the way that healthcare is are the insurance carriers and our Congress, because they get money from insurance companies and from lobbyists. Those are the only people that are winning. We, the American people, we're not winning because we've already heard from them. They can pay 100% for our claim. They can pay 100% of our premium. If you're on a Medicare Advantage plan, chances are you're paying nothing. The government, Medicare, is paying the carrier to cover you. But we already heard from them. These carriers are not paying their claims. They're getting huge amounts of money from us, and they're not paying their claims. So the solution then is to give them more money. They're going to raise the prices every year. Every year, the premiums go up. They never go down. They always go up, okay? And we know for a fact now they do not pay the claim. So why would we give them more money? No, I'm not saying we should abolish Medicare. I'm not even talking about Medicare. I'm talking about Medicare Advantage, which is separate. I don't think Medicare is the problem. I think Medicare is great. But Medicare Advantage, when we allow a private carrier to determine whether or not we can get procedures, and they hold all the money, and they have a system called the McKinsey system where they hold on to our money as long as possible and do not pay the claims, that is a problem. That's a problem. I don't know if Medicare for all is the solution. I really don't. I would have to take a look at other countries that do that. I don't know if that's the answer. But I know that what we're doing currently is not the answer. It's 100% not the answer.
$1 a month. She talked about the fact that she can't sleep at night, that she gets short of breath.
Anyways, I don't want to hear this guy lie anymore about this. I think this is complete propaganda when they try to convince you that your tax money needs to go to subsidize health insurance companies. This is a long hearing. This hearing, I think it's like over 5 hours. So, you know, we just got like close to 90 minutes in tonight. So I'll definitely be here tomorrow night and we'll continue this. But thank you guys so much for joining me tonight. Again, I think it's so important that we're all here watching these hearings because these hearings really don't get a lot of press. And it's important that we know what's going on. We know what our representatives are saying behind the scenes. And knowledge is power. So the more that we know, the more that we can do individually. Thanks again. Check out my bio. There's a lot of new links, and then we just launched a few more membership tiers, so take a look at that. And I will see you guys here tomorrow. Have a great night.